evening, everyone. It is 6:30 on May 11th, and I'm calling the UDC meeting to order. Can I get a roll call?
Mr. Sawhill?
Here.
Mr. Winchester?
Here.
Ms. Ream? Here. Mr. Condon?
Here.
Mr. Leonetti?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Sullivan and Ms. Morse have been excused. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a additional item tonight that I'd like to add to the agenda, and that is the memo from the 1% for Art. I'd like to have it added to C3, which is special order of business, and then have it discussed after the public hearings. Can I get a motion for that? Oh, I got one from Mr. Miller and one second from Ream. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any objections? Seeing none, okay, that is moved to C3, and we'll hear it after, or go through it after the public hearing. So next is minutes. We have no minutes. And after that is disclosures. I'm going to go down the list and call out, and people will just chime in if they have any disclosures. Mr. Winchester, disclosures? Nope. Mr. Sawhill?
No disclosures, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Condon?
No disclosures.
Mr. Miller?
No disclosures.
Ms. Ream?
No disclosures.
Thank you, and I have no disclosures tonight as well. Next is informational item, land use plan map. Tom Davis. Is Mr. Davis here? There he is. Hello, Mr. Davis. Hello. Thank you, Sharon. Sharon's passing out some updated maps and looks like a presentation. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a quick check-in and briefing for the Urban Design Commission regarding the Anchorage Bowl Land Use Plan Map project. It is a land use plan, however, it does contain a lot about the future character of the community, the future kinds of places that we would like to make out of the Anchorage Bowl between now and 2040. Touched base briefly with the UDC a few months back. At this point, I'm just letting you know that what we've passed out is our community discussion draft. We released it on February 29. The public comment period on this draft ends at the end of this month. And once we've collected the public input about this draft, we will then turn around a public hearing draft this summer. We would greatly appreciate if the Urban Design Commission could be prepared to take a look at that upcoming public hearing draft. As for this draft, any comments that the Commission has or individual commissioners have before the end of this month are appreciated. What I handed out was inside this draft on the first page is a handout that contains some of the more specific references to community design, placemaking, urban design within the draft Anchorage Bowl Land Use Plan map document. So it does contain a number of design references. I also wanted to keep you guys up to speed as to what we've been telling the Planning and Zoning Commission. We held a briefing with the Planning and Zoning Commission on May 2nd, and we provided them with this handout here in this room as well. This handout focused quite a bit on the data sources for the plan, and it informed the Commission about the residential land needs forecasts and other data points that are going to inform the public hearing draft. It contained a lot of that material. It also touched on a lot of characteristics, including community character, types of neighborhoods in town. And so I just wanted you all to have that, have this document so that you basically have a sense of where this project is. The very last slide gives you a sense of the public review schedule for the land use plan map. And you know, it's a land use plan. It's presented as a two-dimensional map, but we are following the trend in urban planning overall, is that this plan is basically talking about a three-dimensional city. And so along with the map, the document contains a description of every kind of place that we envision in the bowl. There are about 18 of them. And each description, most every description, contains a bit about the character of the place. What kind of place is it going to be? There are, in addition to those basic land use descriptions, there are a couple of what we call growth supporting features. And in your reference sheet, there's actually a line about them at the very end of section 2. Growth supporting features on pages 34 and 38 of the through 38 of the plan. They speak to a couple of things called first is greenway supported development. This would be extending our trail system, perhaps some daylighting of creeks or other public spaces into some of our redevelopment centers. Transit-supported development corridors, some of you may be familiar with. It's an idea we're carrying forward from Anchorage 2020. And then two more growth-supporting features, one called traditional neighborhood design, which calls out those neighborhoods in town, mostly around downtown, older parts of the city, which while they may have the same land use and residential density as areas in outlying parts of the bowl, they're very different in how they look and they feel. They're basically like a difference between South Addition or Spenard with a finer street grid, older housing stock, as opposed to cul-de-sac country down by Diamond Boulevard near where I grew up. We're calling those neighborhoods out because they look different, they feel different, and we believe on this plan they may function differently. Lastly, the last growth supporting feature is it shows up on the map as a speckled dot pattern, a stipple pattern, overlaying over the base colors. That's called residential mixed use development. Some residentially colored areas on this map have this stipple. And that means in those areas we're particularly looking at introducing more commercial mixed use in that particular residential area to make it a true mixed use environment. Limited targeted extent on the land use plan map, but a concept that's growing based on feedback we've been hearing. You also see that stipple pattern over some of the commercial areas. Some of the purples and pinks are existing business districts. In those areas we would be encouraging residential more aggressively within areas currently zoned business. So residential housing over the storefront, housing behind the storefront in livable environments. This compact growth pattern in all these areas, these centers or these growth supporting features, it really demands a more careful look at the design of development and how it relates to the surrounding neighboring properties. This is a plan that seeks to accommodate another up to 45,000 additional residents. We're filling in, and this is all in the bowl. We're filling in, and so as we grow closer to each other as a city, our properties become closer neighbors to each other. It's a plan that looks at accommodating that while emphasizing how uses can be compatible with each other physically. So it's an urban design plan as well as a land use plan. When the public hearing draft comes out, we will get that straight to you all and hope that if you all have any interest that either individually as a commission that you provide your thoughts on it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. I think this is really good information and definitely applicable to the UDC. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Obviously, we just got it right now. Seeing none, so why don't we take a look at it? And you did ask, I heard you ask for comments. So perhaps we can put it at the end of the agenda for the May 25th meeting, and it gives people a little bit of time. I think the 27th is your deadline, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So then we can discuss it at the end of the next meeting and then provide any comments then. If we need to go beyond that, we can discuss it at that time. Great, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which there is nothing. So that's good. Unfinished business, there's nothing. Regular agenda, resolutions of approval, there are none, which we will talk about that email that everyone received at the end of the meeting. Next is public hearings. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meetings is: 1, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for the public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Urban Design Commission Rules of Procedures. 2A, petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, is 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when the time has been reserved. B, representatives of groups, community councils, and PTAs are 5 minutes, and C, individuals are 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. Number 4, an individual may have an appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. The first hearing that we have is case number 2016-0043, major site plan review for the South Anchorage Sports Parks Improvements Project. Do we have staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the site plan for the 2016 improvements to the South Anchorage Sports Park. This park is located north of Clatt Road, west of C Street, east of Clatt Bog, and south of Minnesota Drive. There are existing improvements in the park that currently they include an American Legion baseball field, 2 Little League fields, a paintball facility, an off-leash dog park, and a radio-controlled park, model car park. The 2016 improvements include installation of a playground and a pavilion. There are improvements to the south parking lot that include lighting, striping, interior landscaping, which currently there is no interior landscaping in that parking lot. Crosswalks from that parking lot to the new playground pavilion area, drainage improvements, and a pickup and drop-off lane. Site lighting along the interior roads and the parking lots. Relocation of the RC park from the southeast to the southwest corner of the park. Visual enhancement landscaping along Clatt Road. Fencing and lighting of the off-leash dog park, and topsoil and turf and ornamental plantings to enhance and define the area for the off-leash dog park. Part of the conditions for the site plan is that it be consistent with what was originally approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in 1998. There has been consistency in the design and the development process from that point to the current site plan that is before you tonight. Community park facilities, including the playground, the pavilion, a gateway feature, are located north of the south parking lot in conformance with that original South Anchorage Sports Park master plan, which was a bare outline of where the facilities were intended to be located, and it is following that plan that was approved in 1998. The proposed improvements to the South Anchorage Sports Park are consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and the site plan complies with all applicable development and design standards set forth in the current Title 21. To that end, the department does recommend approval of the major site plan review for the 2016 South Anchorage Sports Park, subject to the conditions 1 through 6 found on page 13 of the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would point out that we were handed a packet, and it appears that if you could clarify this, that perhaps this is the presentation.
Mr. Chair, that is a packet of the presentation of the slideshow that is going to be presented by the representative in the Parks Department.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we received some comments submitted after the packet was finalized regarding the berm near the RC car park, and the request was to raise that berm from 4 feet to 8 feet. And I was just wondering if I think I have that right. Yeah, just wondering if staff, if you had any comments about that.
There is landscaping that is proposed along that area. There is also landscaping in the right-of-way. There is landscaping or existing natural vegetation along a portion of the south boundary. I do know that the Parks Department does have plans for preserving some of that existing natural vegetation and providing additional landscaping. They are also planning on planting landscaping on the south side of the Clatt Road right-of-way adjoining or adjacent to that residential neighborhood, which I believe that the Parks representative can provide more information. However, there is also concern from residents of that residential neighborhood that there has been a lot of illegal or unfortunate activity that has taken place within the boundary of the park. And one of the critical features of planning for this park is to create a safe environment. And the police department does do regular patrols, especially in wintertime, and they really need sight lines to be able to see into the park. That's why lighting is critical. And so creating an 8-foot berm would defeat the purpose of providing a safe environment for park users in long winter nights. And that is my understanding of limitations on that berming and providing vegetations, but still being able to preserve those sight lines. And perhaps representatives of the Parks Department or their representatives can expand on the limitations and the importance of being able to provide a safe environment for people who are actually using the park throughout the entire year, including dark winter nights, because it's supposed to be a year-round facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Is the petitioner here? Hello, if you could state your name for the record and spell it, please.
Hello, thank you. My name is Maeve Nevins. I'm a park planner with the municipality of Anchorage. And
Can you spell your name? Can you spell your name, please?
Sure. Maeve, M-A-E-V-E, Nevins, N-E-V-I-N-S.
Thanks.
I have with me tonight, I have my engineering team and Jacques Boutet with the Boutet Company. So this first slide is the existing conditions. I just want to share with you a little bit of the history of the park. It's gone through a lot of improvements over the past 10 years or so. And recently, we just did a master plan update. During that master plan update, we identified the existing conditions and as you can see, we have the baseball fields, the American Legion, and then to the north we have an existing paintball facility, and then a wide open area that was formerly a place where they were dumping material from a surcharge site, and so it was an overfill site. And anyway, the existing conditions are what you see here. It's been paved all the way through. There's a parking lot to the north, there's a parking lot in the center, and a parking lot to the south. Through a master planning process to update the original master plan that our department went through in the last couple years, we have discovered that there are more issues and concerns that the community is aware of, and the biggest one, of course, is being they want to improve the safety. We have poor soils and drainage on the site. It's predominantly 15 to 30 feet deep of peat moss. We really don't have enough amenities to attract casual use and regular traffic to the site, so we want to improve the amenities and attract year-round visitation. And there's just generally few eyes on the site because we don't have those amenities, and so we'd like to improve that, the activity. And there is an overall perception that the park is neglected. So through that master plan update process, we then identified what the community would like, and of course facilities to attract the park users. Trails are very important to this community. Currently they use the park to walk dogs predominantly, and also other recreation activities that involve social trails. We'd like to improve those trails, that network, and make it a looping system. We'd like to improve the landscaping and the overall beautification. As you heard earlier in the staff report, there isn't currently landscaping within the parking lots, and it's kind of a sea of asphalt, and so we'd like to bring those up to code. We'd like to upgrade the facilities and provide access to utilities. So in the fall of this past year, we added water and sewer, and we've connected the existing ball fields to the city water. So that's very important for the irrigation. And overall, enhancing the security and maintenance. We're going to be adding lighting, and I'll talk more about what we hope to do here in the future. But lighting is one of the big things that we've heard from both the police department and the community that will help improve the safety, and then also improve the visual sight lines with landscape improvements. Common themes, it's the same thing that I was just talking about. You know, safety is one of the biggest requests of the community. Make it attractive so more users come, and utilize the naturalistic features that are existing on site. This is the adopted master plan, and you can see, I'm just going to walk you through some of what they came to a conclusion of. So the adopted master plan came with improvements to the parking, landscaping, lighting all the way through on the entire drives. To the north, a dog park would be on the north end of the park, and the existing paintball would actually be buffered.
I apologize for that flickering there. Can you check your connection and see if maybe it's plugged in all the way? Not sure why it's flickering, but sorry, go ahead. Nope. We have the pages in front of us. Maybe if you could just use, there you go, it's back.
I could jump to this.
Maybe if it continues to flicker, we use the
Yeah, if it
Elmo
continues,
or whatever
we'll
that
jump
thing's
over.
called.
Okay, so then to the north, they also requested a water feature with the trails and the fenced dog park. As you move to the south, you see that the parking lot would be improved. Moving further south, the ball field, the American Legion field, that would get the updated irrigation, and then the parking lot would have the lighting.
Do you want to switch to the Elmo?
It's okay.
Okay.
And then moving all the way to the far south, you have a playground facility down here that would have a picnic shelter and amenities for the playground, and really be the central core of the park. We would currently, the remote control vehicle park is over here where the casual use landscaping area would be. We would move that to the west, and then ultimately a bike park would be designed and developed. So of the items I just mentioned, the implementation plan came out of that master plan process, which was adopted in 2014. And this is a list of the implementation plan, and you can see what we are going to achieve. So I'll start with task number 1, installing utilities. And if you task number 1 is installing utilities. Like I said, we've already put in the water and the sewer, and we will be adding lighting throughout the park. We've drafted, we're almost done with our design engineering plans for the site plan, and we've developed our engineering cost estimates. Our current budget is approximately $2.9 million, and we have enough funding to get the majority of the tasks completed. Park beautification, we've already closed the woodlot, and we've cleaned up the majority of that area. We've been working on our finished grading, and we will be finishing that this year, and then providing the first phase of landscape improvements. Site preparation, continued more with the landscape improvements. It's kind of an overhaul of the trail system, security upgrades, and striping and cleanup of the existing parking lots. And then the final one is to install the site amenities such as informational signage, kiosks, park maps, benches, picnic shelter. If you flip to the next stage, years 2 to 5, we're hoping to kick this off as part of this implementation plan. We will be developing this community park facility, and that's going to be to build the new playground, the pavilion shelter, add an ADA accessible parking lot, a drop-off and loading area, and we'll be installing porta potties. The sewer has been located, and it has been already put into place for future development as funding becomes realized. Developing trails, as I mentioned. The first phase of the dog park would be constructed. That would include fencing for a small dog park area, and then also fencing for the larger or just multi-use or all-size dog area. There would be a landscape berm to buffer between the dog park as well as the paintball area, and it would be clearly defined with site amenities. We will not be doing the bike park in this phase. That will be down the line as funding becomes available. But we will be developing the remote control park. We'll be relocating them to the western portion of the park. And we'll be installing appropriate landscaping to mitigate not just the visual concerns of the community council, but also to provide selective view sheds. So we've worked extensively on that. With the upgrades to the paintball facility, they will be getting water, which they didn't have water before. And we'll be working with that.
You can go to the Elmo. It might be a little bit clearer for us to understand what phase you're working with. Sorry about that.
I'm going through the implementation plan, and I'm on 2 to 5 years.
Not sure that's any better, but it's not flickering. Can you pull the mic a little closer to you? Sorry if you're going to stand over there. Thanks.
Okay, well, you all have a packet, right? So we're looking at the 2 to 5 years. So as I mentioned, I got through the bike park, so that'll be 2017. I got through the remote control park. We'll be relocating them and then upgrading the paintball. They'll be getting water and a buffer berm around their perimeter. There will be a fence between the paintball and the dog park, just to clarify that. And then if you flip the page to the 5 to 10 year plan, it just shows more about what we're going to continue to phase in as funding becomes available. And so you can see that phase 3 will include developing the baseball complex further, and also at the bottom there, task 15, develop the bike park. That's intended to be a future park. Okay, if we jump to the work plan, you can see the graphic, and I also have a blow-up of the entire work plan over there. And that's generally showing what we're going to be focusing on. If you flip the page to the north section, you can see in yellow that highlights the trails that we're going to be working on. Okay, great. I apologize for how this is flowing. So there you can see the work plan. And then the trails on the north section, you can see, I guess I can just point to it. You can see the small dog fence area is over here on the right. And then there will be a fence all the way around here. You can see to the south and to the north. On the north side of the park is Minnesota, and there's already an existing fence. There's extensive landscaping that's clap bog, and then the property in the middle. So there's already a natural buffer, and we are not going to fence that portion at this time. But we'll be putting in the social trails and defining them using our youth employment and parks crew. If you flip the page to the central section, you can see the trails will continue in yellow. So there will be a strong north-south route. And then we'll be putting lighting in the parking lot. And then down south is where the majority of the work is going to be occurring. And you can see on the south section page, this is going to get a major overhaul with the parking lot. We'll be adding the landscaping and improving the drainage. We'll be adding the ADA parking lot to the north, and then the new, pretty amazing playground and picnic shelter, which we're all really excited about that. There will be trails. The social trails will continue on, and they will also connect off to the left to where the remote control park will be designed and built by the Youth Employment and Parks crew and volunteers. Oh, I should point out the landscaping, since that was brought up. The landscaping visual enhancement is to the south here.
Your time is up, and I imagine there'll be some commissioners that have some questions that you can finish your presentation. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sahel?
Yeah, do you have anything more you'd like to add?
I do. Can I continue? Would that be okay, Mr.
Yes.
Okay, real quick, because this is the kind of the best part. The playground section. So you can see in this section what the playground is going to look like. So the picnic shelter is here on your left. There will be a 30-foot tall net climber. There'll be a hill with a double roller slide built into it. What you see in the photograph on the upper right-hand corner is a single roller slide, but there is actually, that would be 2 of them so that kids could go down next to each other. This park is fully inclusive, meaning that it's usable by people with disabilities of all ages and all ranges. And so that's what you see at the bottom of the slide is a ramp to actually help kids get off the slide and get out of the way. So if they're waiting for their wheelchair, they can just scoot off to the side and not get hit by an oncoming slider. We have a lot of features like that built into the park. On the bottom of the page, you can see something called the Cozy Cocoon. That's actually to help children with autism, and it creates a little comfortable place for them. We have 2 of those located within the playground. This apple here is a custom designed 2 to 5-year-old piece of equipment. It's going to have the slide and then a climber inside of it. And then there's a ball far on the right. I actually refer to that as the vomit ball. I'm sorry, but that's what it is in a sense. It's a crazy little ball that you can climb into and spin around. But it's really neat because if you have a mobility disability, you can actually get on the first level. And so you can still be a part of it. You can still spin around, and you can still climb around within that first level. So it's pretty incredible. There's nothing like that here in Anchorage. There's actually nothing like that in the world. It's a first of its kind, and it'll be launched in the market, and we'll be the first to get it. So that's the best part of the presentation. Where are we now? We are in the final stages. My team is almost done. We've selected all of our equipment, and we're here to finish this up. And we hope to break ground in the summer. Okay.
Great, thank you. I had a couple of questions on the approval that we're doing tonight. You had mentioned a lot in your presentation in the different phases, and I just wanted to clarify tonight what we're looking at are 4 things: the south parking lot, the remote control RC park relocation, Platte Road right-of-way landscaping, and playground area. Is that accurate, or are we adding to that right now?
It's generally it. Let me pull up the work plan. I already lost it. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, Jacques Doutet here, Chair, Mr. Chair. We are
Spell your
also.
name. Can you spell your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you spell your name for the record?
Yes, first name Jacques, Jacques. Last name Boutet, Boutet. I'm the engineer of record for the project.
Thank you.
We are also going to, in addition to the 4 items you mentioned, we'll be moving north with a full set of illumination improvements covering both the roadways as well as the central and north parking lots. We will also be bringing, because we have the new utility connections almost complete and we'll have public water, we're also going to extend irrigation farther north up into some of the fields up towards Minnesota. And then additionally, then we're going to also be developing the dog parks, which would be the fencing project and some grading up on that north end to kind of create terrain areas for the dogs as well as a space for an agility course.
Okay, thank you. So you're anticipating that's part of this approval process?
Through the chair, yeah, yes.
Okay, I didn't see some of that in here, so we'll have to, if anybody has any questions regarding that, then we'll discuss that a little bit later. Ms. Nevins, I'd like to comment that good work on the inclusive playground. I think most of the commissioners might know about it, but perhaps don't. I think it's a really great component to the community, and it's been needed for a while. And on that, I will ask if anybody has any questions. Mr. Condon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to understand the scope of the project that we're looking at, there's a non-motorized bike park that is not part of what we're looking at.
Correct.
Then what else are we not looking at?
The main, where the dog park is on the north, the master plan calls for a water feature, but it's essentially a pond, and it's out of our budget at this time. So those are the two big things that we are not going to be able to do with this funding.
Okay, that's clear.
Sorry.
And through the chair, just to kind of clarify the scope, if you go to the back of your packet, beginning on page 109, there is a plan set that covers all the improvements that are for which approval is being requested tonight. Pages 109 through 140. If you look, you'll see the illumination. In addition to the park that we've discussed extensively, the landscaping on the south end, you'll also see the illumination that continues north through the park and spreads out through the other parking lots, as well as the fencing plan for the dog park.
Okay, I'll just be the first to guinea pig up here. That's confusing because you have a 4 itemized thing up front, but yet then there's other stuff that's actually included. So if anybody else has any other questions regarding that, we'll bring that up. Mr. Condon, did you have anything else? All right, thank you. Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the slides that you presented where you have a north section, a central section, and a south section, sorry, I'm confused too. That is the scope of the work that you're intending to do, because the water feature isn't included in the north section on your slide.
Correct.
And so the water feature is not part of this right now.
Correct.
Okay, so it's exactly what's on these slides.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So I got that part straight. And then the next one that I had a question on, and that is in the master planning, you show parking off of Tower Road adjacent to the remote control area. And right now it looks like there's some form of road parking there. Is that intended to be parking for the remote control? Because it seems like they've got a long hike to get over there. And so I'm just curious if you're putting in the remote control area, but you're not putting any parking for it, you're sort of putting it in a very remote area. And it looks like master plan wise, you had parking off of Tower Road.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Boutet for that.
Through the chair, your observation is correct. Again, we are in phase 1 of a multi-phase development, and we are constrained by available funding. In the master plan, I think their estimate of total development cost for the park is between $8 to $10 million. We're bringing a little over $2 million to the table. So we've had to be very judicious in prioritizing and selecting improvements that we can cover with this. The one benefit that the project has, and this may be the only facility in town that is massively oversupplied with parking. We have approximately, by our calculations, again, yet to be verified by the traffic department, but 2 to 3 times the required parking, including on the south end of the site in that existing, again, yes, it's a couple 100-foot walk over to the radio control park area. So there is plenty of parking relative to are we or are we not going to, at some future date, construct the Tower Road parking. Again, that is absolutely an open question. One of the major challenges in the project, one that is become a big concern in the financing, is that the depth of organics in the site ranges from 10 to 20 feet. And so everything that we do on the surface, with the exception of maybe soft trails and the pump track, but if we put any kind of hardscape on the surface, we basically have to excavate down 15 to 20 feet and then come back up with imported fill. So I'm sure Commissioner Sawhill can really, as well as Commissioner Ream, can really understand how that impacts the development cost of a project. So we've had to defer the tower parking just to kind of use those dollars towards, more concrete improvements.
Thank you for the response. My question really is a little bit more circuitous than that, so let me give you a little bit more clarity to it. It looks to me like there's existing parking there or roadway that is dirt in front of that area. Is that going to be open to people?
No, it's currently gated.
So that's gated off, whatever that parking is that's there now. And so the little, you have a little, looks like a viewing stand or a grandstand there that's on the opposite side. So none of that is going to be accessible. People are going to carry everything from the other parking lot across.
Yeah, we met with the remote control user group just a few weeks ago, and we discussed this as a concern. We certainly would love to get them, some sort of access through that gate. At this time, it hasn't been realized. We are optimistic that we will realize funding for Tower Road improvements and for the parking along there in the future, and it is part of our ultimate master plan to get that parking in there. But some solutions to get them out, we're talking about remote control vehicles, and the pathway that leads from the south parking lot over to the proposed site for the remote control area is actually a very level, very firm, compacted gravel trail, and it's quite wide currently, and it will pull a little trailer, a little dolly or whatever they need to bring if they need to load up. So we've been talking about how we can make it more accessible for them, but at this time they would have to go through that existing pathway.
Thank you.
Ms. Ream.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So not to belabor the point, but I think page 4 and 5 of our packet actually lists the phase 1 improvements that are included, except for the irrigation. I didn't see the irrigation extension. But I do have a question. We're making all these ADA improvements, and I realize there's a lot of peat out there. Are these soft surface trails going to be compact enough for wheelchair access and that sort of thing? Because I can see that someone coming into the parking lot would be very limited on where they could go otherwise.
Certainly, that's a great question. The trails around the picnic shelter and all through the playground area are going to actually be asphalt, so that is fully accessible. The soft surface trails that we're proposing will be compacted and constructed to ADA accessibility, meaning the grades and the compaction will be there. At some point in time, we would like to pave them when funds are realized.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Condon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go back to this remote control park. So we got some additional information about raising the berm to 8 feet. Staff said that's not good for lines of sight. Why is it that remote control park, which generates a lot of noise, why is that not located on the north side of the site near the paintball facilities, which also generate a lot of noise? You've gotten comments back from neighbors who are concerned about the amount of noise that that remote control park is going to generate. Hence, you provide us with a berm. Why not relocate that to the north? Did you consider that?
Yes, sir. I'm going to defer to my park superintendent, Josh Durand, to answer that question.
Mr. Durand, can you spell your name for the record?
I can. Josh, J-O-S-H, Durand, D-U-R-A-N-D. I think your question is very valid. I do see that that is more of a question appropriate from planning and zoning when we brought this as a master plan, because it identifies specific locations where these amenities are to be had. So through that process, it was realized that this was the best location for it. So we are adhering to that process that already existed.
So what was the rationale for maintaining the location in the south?
I think some of the reasoning is, one, there's a completely different use that's going to happen in the north area as it relates to paintball and the very large expansive dog park. This location was chosen here because it was an open site and there was an opportunity to provide screening for it. And I think if you think of noise, I think that the sounds associated with this large dog park would supersede what you'll realize from the RC park.
And if I could chime in a little bit here, I think that it's imperative to recognize our scope here. We're dealing with a major site plan review, not a master plan. And the master plan, as Mr. Durand suggested or said, was accomplished at the Planning and Zoning Commission and approved. So our purview is not to move the RC car park development. I think our purview, and everybody can correct me if I'm wrong, staff as well, is to evaluate the case based on the major site plan review elements, as well as, you know, what goes on within the RC. I think that the berm is certainly an issue that needs to be talked about, but moving the RC to another location or trying to figure out another quieter space is left up to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that was done in 14, I think.
Correct. And another thing to take into consideration, there is an RC park that does exist there now, and that was not brought to the table as a concern, so it did remain in the same general proximity to Clatt Road and to residences.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, if I'd like, can I add one comment? My understanding of the remote control parks now is that they are actually moving to electric, which makes them much quieter. So I don't know if that influences your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I was just concerned because I saw comments made by the public that the neighbors had a problem with the location of the park where in that location because of the noise. So, okay, so apparently Planning and Zoning has resolved this issue, and okay.
Well, I don't think that the issue is resolved by Planning and Zoning. The location has been resolved. So this comment from whoever, Mr. Baird, should be considered. I haven't read through this whole letter, but Ms. Ferguson referred to it earlier that, or no. But it is basically an 8-foot tall.
Well, the public comments are on page 60 of our packet from the public.
Okay, so you weren't referring to this letter then that
Well, I was.
Mr. Baird sent yesterday that we got today on the table?
Right.
Okay.
No, I was obliquely referring to that. I know that Commissioner Miller had pointed out that, you know, they wanted it raised to 8 feet, but there are problems with that. No, I think it's an issue. I think it's a valid issue. And if you think that Planning and Zoning has completely resolved this issue, then I don't know. Maybe it's a question for staff. Am I indeed outside of my purview to ask such a question?
Asking the question is not necessarily your purview. You can ask any question here, and we should listen to every question that's been brought, that gets brought. The issue is if we can relocate this remote control car park to another location. That was your original question, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That was handled with Planning and Zoning Commission, as far as I understand.
Through the chair, Mr. Condon, I believe that if the master plan was approved, as Mr. Chair said, by the Planning and Zoning Commission, to relocate a major element of the master plan, it would require maybe rearranging what was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That would be an amendment to the approved master plan that would probably have to go back. Whatever rearrangement of the master plan would result would probably have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission as amendment to the approved master plan. And that's what I understood Mr. Chair, Mr. Leonetti was basically alluding to in his comment, that the layout of the park and the functions within the park had been approved by the commission. Then that would constitute a major change to the master plan that would have to go back to the commission to approve an amended master plan. And that's what I understood him to be referring to.
Okay. So the process has gone so far at this point that it would be a major setback to relocate that. But I'm still not convinced that enough effort was put into considering locating that remote control park in an area that's next to a very busy roadway, next to a very noisy paintball facility. You've got a bunch of yelping dogs perhaps in that location, but instead it's located right next to the houses. I have a problem with this, and no, I'm not going to attempt to send this back to master planning phase, but yeah, I think this is problematic. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. Did you have a response, Mr. Bouquet? Did you have a response? You're now there, and I looked up and.
Just a quick. Do you mind? Yeah. I do want the commission to appreciate we aren't totally insensitive to the comments that we received about trying to mitigate the impact of this location. So, to the effect of trying to provide reasonable screening, to address concerns, of sight lines from across the street. And I do want to point out to the commission that the houses are, yes, from a property ownership perspective, adjacent to the park, but the separation distance is in the hundreds of feet. So they aren't, in many respects adjacent so much. What I'm handing out are a couple of graphics here for you. The top one is basically a profile or elevation view of the sight lines from the second floor of a house that is located on the south side of Clatt Road, looking north after our proposed construction, including the lower elevation berm. And the purpose of this is to sort of show that, particularly when you introduce trees on the south side of Clatt Road, which we will do this summer, we effectively provide a pretty good screen for activity within the RC park. So we are a patrol car moving down Clatt is going to be able to see into the park from to the north, but they are, I guess technically bad actors could hide in the radio control area and not be surveilled. So we are, in some respects, even with the 3-foot berm, compromising the public safety concern. But we have reached agreement with the community council and with the APD that this is a reasonable compromise to provide that view shed, to give some relief, if you will, to the neighbors to the south, but still preserve some visibility into the park.
So it's also a safety concern, right? Having a berm right there creates the potential for somebody to hide out on the other side.
Absolutely. Anytime you get a vertical feature, and this is something that the police department has been very active vocally in projects all over Anchorage, and the concern for establishing places for bad actors to hide while they do what they do, or even to the effect of creating places for them to set up camps. So we're trying to find that balance of responding to public desire to see the parks screened so that they enjoy a view shed that's sort of more natural and not have to, as you say, watch radio control people or kids at playgrounds or things that that unnatural, if you will. At the same time, we do want to help the public safety folks fulfill their mission.
Thank you.
And then I'll let this go after this, but the second sheet just shows the areas where we've requested right-of-way permit to plant some trees on the south side. So again, this would have no impact on the APD's ability to surveil the park from the road, but it would provide some relief, if you will, from the folks to the south.
Thanks. I would like to bring to your attention that we typically don't see a considerable amount of stuff laid on the table, and tonight there's been more than a considerable amount. So we have kind of an unwritten rule about too much data and giving us time to review the data and postponement and that sort of thing. So I don't think anybody's going that direction tonight, but I'm supposed to read this? Okay, yeah, it's on the back of the agenda. Late public hearing submittal policy, 3 working days, and then we can actually get it. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have one
Yep,
question.
go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Lots of comments, but I'll save those. Just for the record, Commissioner Condon, I shared your concerns, but I'm not going to belabor that. I do have a question on process, though. The additional phase, and this isn't to the applicant, I think this is probably better directed to staff. The additional phases, the bike park and the water feature, will those come before our commission as they get developed, or is this the approval for? I know it's not in our purview right now, but will we be seeing those later on?
Through the chair, Mr. Miller, I believe that what was submitted was the items and what was addressed in the report made to the Urban Design Commission was reflected on pages 4 and 5. There was no comment or review of the additional. I don't know what time constraints that the Department of Parks and Recreation is under, but those weren't even addressed in the staff report. I can only suggest that they should be submitted with an application for review by the Urban Design Commission, because that's the procedure that was followed with phase 1, and it was the additional amenities that are proposed to be included or included in the budget that they have available now. They haven't been addressed, and the design Urban UDC should have an opportunity to just review those as they have reviewed the phase 1 amenities that were submitted and reviewed in this packet tonight.
Okay, thanks. So it sounds like, because I did have some thoughts on those other ones, but I know that's not in front of us right now, so I won't share those, but I was just curious if we were going to see them later on. It sounds like we might.
Yep. Okay, great. Thanks. Did anybody else have any other questions? Hearing and seeing none, the case rests with the commission, and if I could get a nope. Oh yeah, I got to open a public hearing. Would anybody like to testify or come up and talk? We have a gentleman coming behind you, Miss Nevins. Take your time. Hello, sir. If you could state your name for the record and spell it, that'd be great. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you move the microphone on top of the podium there? That'd be great. And speak into that. Thank you.
My name is Ronald Baird. I reside at, the last name is B-A-I-R-D. I reside at 1021 Allison Circle. If you look at page 17 of your packet, it's the second house from the furthest end of Allison Circle, so it'll be directly across from the relocated radio control park. I did submit a letter. I mailed it on April 21st. I do not know why it did not show up in your packet. So last night when I reviewed the packet and didn't see it there, I faxed it from my office to them. So I was disappointed that it didn't make your packet. I'm not in the practice of submitting things at the last minute. I'd be happy to take questions from Mr. Miller and Mr. Condon about what justification for the plan, in the plan for the track being where it is, but I agree that we are at the stage where the plan's been approved and the question is mitigation of the relocation. First, I want to talk about what is the security concern. The security concern is not a long police blotter of rapes, murders, burglaries in the park. There isn't that. What there is you have an unlighted park, and at the time of the plan, I went down and talked to my neighbors. What we see is at 3 o'clock in the morning, some of us are awake, we look out our windows and we see cars parked in the parking lot, sometimes faced in opposite directions, sometimes with their lights on, sometimes with their lights off. That's probably criminal activity, but that's what it is. And that problem is entirely mitigated by lighting. And there's no objection on my part by lighting as bright as you want to make it. That's what the security concern is. There's no evidence, and I know if somebody from the police department was to come and testify to this, I would certainly accept that testimony. But to my knowledge, there's no belief that at this radio control site there will be criminal activity occurring at any time. The activity, to the extent that we know what it is this unexplained presence of vehicles in an unlighted parking lot in the middle of the night.
Your time has come up, but if I could get...
Please continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The second point I want to stress is that the houses that I've said that there's 12, including my own, that directly will look on the relocated site, is that they are all two-story houses. So, and unlike my house, where my main living area is on the first floor, most of these houses have second-story main living areas, dining rooms, living rooms, and so forth, kitchens, that will look out on the relocated site. For that reason, I think the sightline drawings are helpful, but it's really important to recognize that at that level, they're seeing right down into this relocated facility. As I said, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about what happened about this feature in the planning process, but I do agree that we're really talking about mitigation.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Baird? Mr. Miller?
Could you describe some of the noise impacts that you from the existing RC park?
From the existing RC park, as you move eastbound on Klatt, the houses across Klatt from the park are buffered by the topography. In other words, the existing site is tucked into an area that has existing streets, Klatt Road and the road into the park, that buffer the sound. As you move to the west and take that facility out of that little indentation, then it becomes more exposed. The neighbors that I spoke to when we were discussing this at the plan stage complain about noise in the parking lot. And that's because it's completely, the parking lot area is completely unobstructed. I don't know about this electric versus gas, but it makes a buzzing sound that at a certain distance sounds like a loud mosquito, but at the closer you get it, it sounds increasingly louder. And if you're out in your yard, if you're trying to have friends over on your deck, it's definitely audible.
So I think in your letter, let me dig it up here. In your letter, you suggested that an 8-foot berm would take care of that problem, in your opinion?
I had some meetings with the park staff, which I'm very grateful for. They were very accommodating in terms of making the people available to me, and it was my understanding that at that level it would be completely blocked. If the commission is uncomfortable with that level, I think any raising of the berm is an improvement. But it's my understanding from the geometry of it that an 8-foot berm would obscure almost all of the radio control track from the second-story windows of the houses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Mr. Baird? Hearing and seeing. Oh, Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I guess I had was, were you looking for an 8-foot berm along the entire southern border, or just the first, whatever, few hundred feet to block the RC track? Because as you can see on the plans, I mean, there's a very long southern border. There are play fields there and other things. Was the main objection the RC track?
Correct. And I can't formally speak for my neighbors further to the east. I'm not sure what they will see of the track, but I do agree that as you move, from my narrow personal standpoint, the further you move to the east along Platte, the less I'm going to see of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. There are no other questions. I had a question for the petitioner, Ms. Nevins. We've had, oh wait, can't do that yet. I have to see if anybody else would like to speak. And nobody is coming forward, so I will now close the public hearing. And I have a question now for Ms. Nevins. In a bigger picture sense, we've had projects come before us, and the public has asked us to do stuff out of the property of the public entity and out of the right-of-way and in different other right-of-ways. And it looks like tonight that you're asking for, the Parks Department is asking for some trees to be planted within the right-of-way. And I suspect that is in response to comments to block the remote control car.
It is actually in response directly to the resolution of support from the Community Council, from the Bayshore Clat Community Council. So if you refer to that, I don't know that you have a copy. It was given to Margaret when we were giving you your copies, but I'm not sure if it's in your packet. I do have one copy here I could present to you. But I can read that one sentence if you'd like. What
Sure, yeah.
they're asking for. Okay.
This is in the resolution from the Community Council to the Planning and Zoning.
No,
to
the
everybody,
resolution of support in favor of this project that was awarded on May 8th, 2016.
Okay.
And it should be in your packets. Let's see here. At the bottom of the first page, the final whereas it's about the fifth bullet down, excuse me, landscape enhancements, which includes landscaping on both sides of Clatt Road to allow visibility into the park area while helping to provide a living sight and sound barrier to homeowners located on the south side of Clatt Road. Construction of a berm on the north side of Clatt Road not exceeding 3 feet in height to supplement landscaping effectiveness while not preventing visibility into the park area. So
Okay, so that addresses.
that's where they defined the 3-foot height. And previous to getting the resolution approved, we had worked with Mr. Baird, and we had originally proposed the 8-foot, but then when we went back to the community council, they said, no, we want to make sure that we can see into it. So it, you know, as Jacques spoke to, it is that balance of how high do you make it, but you still have, you know, vegetation buffer.
Right. Yeah.
And so our compromise, and as supported by the community council, was to go ahead and drop it to 3 feet.
So that's actually on park land, though.
Correct.
I was referring to the 5, 6, looks like evergreen trees in the Clatt right away on the south side of the road.
Right, so to remedy the homeowners' concerns and to be a good neighbor, honestly, we do want to help buffer it as much as we can with the visual enhancement, and so we did propose to landscape in the right-of-way, and we currently have a right-of-way permit in process right now, and so that's what you're seeing.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Sahel, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. I was wondering why lighting wasn't included for the RC track.
The RC track is not currently funded by the municipality. It's funded by the users, and they do wish to have lighting at some point, but because it's a user-funded project and it's something that is not currently lit, it's on the concept level. We've heard all of their requests, just like they requested the viewing platform. They've requested a lot of things that probably they won't be able to afford, and we may not support because there are a lot of other priorities at this time. So
It just seems like it's going to be a dark little corner, especially when we add an 8-foot berm in front of it, and maybe some lighting would be important.
Jacques, do you want to speak to this? I believe that there's lighting along the road.
There, through the chair. There will be lighting up on Clatt Road, of course. There is, I should say. We are bringing the lights all the way to the west edge of the south parking lot. And in an effort to give a little bit of assistance for future development, we are also proposing, as an additive alternate, to bring in power into the RC park. But at this time, we can afford to bring in conduit and conductors, but it's going to basically come to the surface as a power cord, basically, for the RC to recharge their electric motors, which they've asked for. And that would set the stage, if you will, as future money becomes available to go ahead and bring lights into that area. That would also, of course, be part of what you see when we come back, hopefully sooner rather than later, to present the pump track and some of the other improvements that future phases will see.
Would you have objection to an additional condition to provide lighting on the trail to the RC park and at the RC park?
I'm going to defer to my boss, Josh Strand.
We would not object to that, but I would ask that you do take into consideration that the RC park is predominantly a summer use. The park does have established hours, so the lighting would be only providing safety for this area that does not have vehicle access.
And one of my concerns is there is no vehicle access to it right now. People are going to be carrying everything down.
Vehicle access will be provided through a removable bollard with a key that can be provided to the permittee for any type of special events that are happening there.
And one of the things we did hear from a presentation from APD on enhancing safety was that lighting was one of the biggest things that enhances safety. So that's part of my concern and part of the reason I'm kind of going that direction.
No, and I do appreciate your concerns as it relates to that. And it is something we wouldn't object to. And then speaking to the berm, speaking to the landscaping, we do serve Anchorage. We do want the community to be happy, and we do want to provide a product that is both safe and also does
worked well.
And I think one of the reasons you're going to see an addition of an 8-foot berm is I kind of agree with Mr. Condon. I think this was the wrong location for this, too close to the homes. It should have been at a different location. But since P&Z has determined this is the right location, I think additional sound mitigation is appropriate.
And I think one other thing to take into consideration that I did not mention before as it relates to the sound, do keep in mind that it is Clatt Road that does separate these areas, and I would have to guess that the sounds associated with that facility go above and beyond what is realized through the RC Park.
Mr. Duran, could you just state your name for the record? I was asked to have you state your name again since you came up.
Josh, Josh.
Don't need to spell it, just Duran.
Duran.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Getting back to the 8-foot berm, sorry to belabor it. You had previously indicated that it was for public safety. The community council said they wanted to see in. I'm just wondering if APD has commented on that or if they've chimed in. Josh, it looked like you wanted to talk to it.
We do have 224 other parks in town, and one thing that we do find that we do hear again and again from APD is maintaining clear sight lines to the park equals safe parks. They don't typically go into the parks to patrol. It typically happens through a quick drive-by. So if in a quick drive-by they can see negative activity happening, lighting helps, clear view sheds help. That's what we're looking to resolve. But I don't believe there's a specific comment from APD as it relates to this 8-foot versus 3-foot berm.
Do you happen to know if, as you're driving past that area, if you'd be able to see the RC Park from with the 3-foot berm?
I do have a pretty good understanding of it. If you were headed westbound, you would be able to see it with an 8-foot berm. If you were headed eastbound, you would not be able to see it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I had another question. So this RC Park is not scheduled for construction. It's in the plan. We're approving it tonight. It's not scheduled for construction, but it sounds like people use it regardless. Is that accurate?
No, it is scheduled for construction.
Oh, it is scheduled.
It is scheduled for the summer.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
It will not be fully realized to the user group's desire at this time.
Oh, that's what that. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Great. Looks like Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify Josh's comment. You said with an 8-foot berm going westbound, even with an 8-foot berm, you can see into the RC, so it wasn't 3. You were specific.
Correct.
8.
Yes.
But going eastbound with an 8-foot berm, you cannot.
Correct.
Okay. So hence, the 3-foot berm, easily you can see into the park going both directions.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Looks like we're closing the public hearing. Since nobody had any other questions before, I don't think there's any other questions now looking, and people are not nodding. So the case rests with the commission. Can I get a motion for case, well, 2016-0043 major site plan review for South Anchorage Sports Park improvements. Still waiting. Do we want to discuss it anymore? We're waiting for a...
I'm just trying to figure out findings here. Hang on.
Gotcha.
I think we should discuss it. There's a couple of...
Mr. Miller, we have, thank you for a motion, and Ms. Ream for the second. Mr. Miller, would you state your motion, please?
Yes, in the case of, let's see, where are we at? 2016-0043, I move to approve.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sub 2 conditions, staff conditions 1 through 6. I'd also like to add another condition. Do I do that now, or is that another?
Would you like to do that now or later?
Yes, I'd like to add a 7th condition to increase the berm size to the south of the RC Park from a 3-foot berm to an 8-foot berm.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ream. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I'm not in full support of the 8-foot berm, so I would like to discuss it a little more. I'm not supporting the motion.
The additional condition
Right.
and the motion.
Just the additional condition.
Well, since the additional condition is with the first motion, then the first motion.
Fail.
So, discussion. Does anybody else have any question? Yes. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it's, you know, I guess I'll request to speak, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sawhill.
Yeah, I guess in general, I think this is a good improvements to the park. I think the master plan is generally being followed with the improvements to the park. The one issue that we're kind of wrapped around is what to do with the RC area, and that's an area of concern. I do support increasing the berm size. I think that's an important component given the location of the RC. I have an additional concern that creating that berm, with the creation of the additional berm, I think it's going to be important to light that area, but I haven't gotten to that yet. But if Ms. Ream does not like condition number 7, then she can make a motion to remove it, would be my suggestion, and then we can just take on that issue and solve it. So I will be supporting the motion and look forward to hearing other commissioners' comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sahel. Ms. Ream?
There wasn't much discussion.
There wasn't. We could talk about it. You wanna
I
talk
guess
about the berm?
my issue with it is, you know, we are on a 4-lane high-speed corridor where vehicles go by. Well, I don't even know what the ADT is, but I'm sure that it's pretty high. This is a populated area back in this area. So, I mean, to spend the money for a few electric and gas RC cars to raise the berm 5 feet for, it looks like, I don't even know, 300 feet long? Seems like money they don't have and money not well spent. Plus, to add to that would be Jim Sawhill's note that there should be now lighting, because now we will have darkened the corridor with the 8-foot berm. So, I don't know, does anybody, we can take a vote. I'm willing, if the majority rules that they want the berm, but I just wanted to make that statement. Is that not legal, Lori? She's giving me the eye.
We can discuss it some more. I can chime in. I'm not in support of a berm. I think that lighting and transparency through that area is important, and with everything that's going on there and the delay of the pavement next to it, I think that it could turn into a pretty serious security issue. If APD is just driving by, then the more transparency this area is, the better. And I think that trumps, I think it actually adds to some of the concerns from the public that talks about people being out there at 3 a.m. I think that if there's a berm there, there's potential for more people to be out there later and going through the area. Even with lighting, I think it's going to be hard to see in there. I do support the notion of lighting, even with the lower berm. I think that this area is going to be dark, and the more lighting, the better. And other than that, I support the motion.
Other than that?
I support the main motion. I don't support the condition. Mr. Miller?
I understand Commissioner Ream's concerns, especially about cost. I have a lot of projects right now that I'm suffering on cost with. However, it seems to me like the view into it might not be sufficient from Clatt Road driving by at 45 or 35 miles an hour. It seems to me that if people want to engage in illegal activities, they're not going to do it next to Clatt Road. They're going to go to the north near the dog park. The other, I don't really think that lighting would be the best way to spend money, considering that most of the time when these cars are in operation, we have 17, 18 hours of daylight. But I do respect the wishes of the neighbors and not wanting to look on this. I don't think I would want to look on it, and I think it's asking a lot of them to accept that. I don't think the 8-foot berm will do much to add criminal activity to that area. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that delay. Do we have any other comments or questions or conditions that anybody would like to add? Right now we have a motion on the table with, I keep losing my paperwork. I'll just restate this and keep everybody on the same page. 2016-0043 approval of a major site plan review for South Anchorage Sports Park Improvements Project with conditions 1 through 6 of the staff packet and condition 7, which is increase the berm along the south side of the remote control park from 3 feet to 8 foot height. Mr. Miller, was that a holdover from last? You already talked, okay. Mr. Sawhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to amend the conditions to add a condition number 8 to provide lighting on the trail to the RC park and lighting for the RC park area.
Thank you, Mrs. Sawyer. We have a motion. We're waiting for a second. Mr. Condon, thank you.
Can I speak to my motion?
Yes. Can you speak to your motion, please? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I have the votes to get this through, but I did want to take a shot at it and have it on the record that it's a concern. I think it's important to have lighting in that area, especially with the increase in the berm size. I think long-term there will probably be lighting in the area, but I think sooner is better. So I'd like to see it go on with the Phase 1 improvements.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Condon.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I intend to support the motion. I think that whoever generated the site plan and put that RC park where they put it did a grave disservice to the community, and there appears to be nothing I can do as an urban design commissioner to rectify that. All we can do is provide these Band-Aid mitigations, and yes, I believe that an 8-foot berm is going to help mitigate the impact of this RC park on the community. And I concur with Commissioner Sawhill that with an 8-foot berm, you do have a dark enclave that should be illuminated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. Do we have any other comments or discussions about the motion to amend, or the amended condition number 8? Oh, there it is. Everybody could vote. Still waiting for Mr. Winchester. Thank you. And that vote, that motion passes. Oh, it failed. How did it fail? Wasn't there? Oh, it had 4 and it needed 5. So that condition is not on the table. Now we're back to the main motion. Would anybody like to discuss more? Mr. Sawyer, you're still in my queue for some reason.
No.
Nope. Mr. Winchester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did support the lighting with the addition of the 8-foot berm. I am concerned about an 8-foot berm without the lighting. So, and I do share some of your and Ms. Ream's concerns. So I would like to propose an amendment for a 6-foot berm. And
Your motion to amend is there, so go ahead and state your motion. Your motion is to make it a 6-foot berm rather than a 3-foot
Yes.
berm along
yes,
the south side of the remote control car park. Okay, thank you. Wait a second. Ms. Ream. Okay, Mr. Winchester, would you like to speak to your motion?
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in lieu of an 8-foot berm is definitely going to sequester this area to the point that you're not going to be able to see in there, and without lighting, I think we're definitely creating an unsafe condition. So my proposal for a 6-foot berm, you have a car driving by. I've done my own little diagram here with a 5-foot window. You're going to be able to see into that park from both sides of the highway as you drive by, not just one, as mentioned by Josh. An 8-foot berm you can only see from one side. I think with a 6-foot berm you'll be able to see into that area in general from both sides of the highway, which will give the police that added a bit of surveillance. And so that's my reasoning for dropping the berm from 8 to 6 feet.
Okay, thank you. There's a little bit of confusion here that we need to clarify, and the confusion is that we have a main motion on the table that when the motion was made, there was a condition added at that time. It wasn't an amendment to the motion. So that motion, or that condition, which is to increase the berm along this RC area from 3 feet to 8-foot height, is still on the table.
And I am basically motioning to amend item number 7 to 6 feet.
Okay, so you're motioning to amend number 7 to
6 feet instead of 8 feet. Can't we do that?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Ms. Ream, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will support this motion because when looking at the sight lines, 6-foot berm should block the RC visibility, the RC park visibility from second story of the homes across the street, and hopefully not put them in the dark and need lighting. So I do intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Do we have any other discussion from commissioners? Nope. Okay, so we need to vote on the motion to amend condition number 7 to state increased berm along the remote control car park from 3 feet to 6 feet. Waiting for Mr. Miller.
Sorry, I'm thinking.
Take your time. And that motion has 5, so that passes. So condition 7 is amended to be 6-foot height rather than 8. So now we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any other discussions? Nope. Everybody please vote. Okay, everybody voted in favor unanimously, so that case passes. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to findings of fact?
Do we need to do findings?
Well, it's closed.
Okay, never mind. I tried.
So no, we can't do any findings.
We're done. Next.
Okay, next item on the agenda is case number 2016-0044, major site plan review for Muldoon Town Square Park, Phase 1. We have staff report.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a major site plan review for Muldoon Town Center Square Park, Phase 1. The park is a new facility that occupies the former site of the Alaska greenhouses. Development of the subject parcel is identified in the Muldoon Town Square Park Master Plan as a top priority action in the immediate 0 to 2 year time frame. Tract A is the westernmost portion of the park and is intended to be the most visible and active space in the park, hosting community-wide events and drawing daily users. This portion of the park will include a playground, a parking lot with 39 spaces, community event space that can support the Muldoon Farmers Market and Spirit of Muldoon Picnic. It will also provide an open space, a feature pavilion, porta potties, and a concrete play ribbon to be used for ice skating in winter and kiddie bike loop in summer, as well as a community event space. As for the parking, a parking lot with 39 spaces is shown on the site plan. Title 21 indicates that land uses such as park and open space are uses not listed or that have no specific requirement. As there is no specific number of parking spaces for parks, Title 21 indicates that off-street parking facilities shall be determined by the director and the traffic engineer, and that is one of the conditions to determine what that number is. Also, the site plan does not show a pedestrian connection to Chester Creek. Children will want to access the creek. There is an existing soft surface trail that was constructed as part of the Chester Creek realignment project. There is no pedestrian connection between this trail and the developed park. Without a designated pathway, users will create their own paths, which may result in erosion or other undesirable situations. That is all I have. Just skipping to page 7 with the department recommendations. I do want to delete condition number 2 that asks for a notice of zoning action and a resolution to be filed with the State of Alaska Recorder's Office. We typically put these on the plans that we do, but being that this is an MOA park, it's probably not necessary that they have this, recorded. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Ms. Ream?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I forget Ed Leonetti, you're chair now. So on condition number 4, can you please just clarify for me, address the lack of pedestrian connections between the developed area and the Chester Creek soft surface pathway?
Right, let's look at one of the parks. Okay, maybe look at page 29 of the packet.
Okay.
And you'll look and you'll see the creek running through there. When they realigned that creek, they put a pathway adjacent to it, and that's the soft surface pathway. I think it's wood chipped or something, some sort of material like that. But there's no way for the park users to get down to the trail, or for people who are on that trail next to the creek to get up into the park. So that's what I was talking about. There needs to be some sort of connections along there. And I did talk with the project landscape architect, and he did say that they are planning to do that, but they hadn't quite finished the engineering on that, so they didn't show it on these plans that they submitted. But I think when they come up to the mic to make their presentation, they can address that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any other questions. Is the petitioner here for presentation? If you could state your name for the record, that'd be great, and spell it.
Good evening. My name is Wan Lee, V-A-N-L-E, and I'm with Arnhem Consultants, and we are representing the Municipality of Anchorage Parks and Recreation Department for the Muldoon Town Square Park Phase 1 Design and Development. And with me today, I have my project team. I have the Parks and Recreation Project Manager, Steve Rayfuse. I also have Josh Duran, the Parks and Recreation Superintendent. I have Don Porter here with me. He's the R&M Consultants Civil Engineering Lead on this project, and Johnny Hayes from Bettisworth North. He's the Landscape Architecture Lead. So we are very excited to be here tonight presenting to you the design and development of Phase 1 of Muldoon Town Square Park. Like Sharon mentioned, this is a new park on the east side of town, the northeast Muldoon area. This is actually a long time coming for the community, over 10 years of dedication, passion, advocacy work, fundraising, and we're here today and we're very excited because it's one step closer for the community to get a park that can be a destination, a year-round destination, a gathering area that the residents can walk, take transit to, bike to, or drive to. As Sharon mentioned, we have a lot of amenities that are in this park, and I'll go into those in a second, but we actually started this process last year, the planning process, the master plan that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission last month. We started with the community last summer doing site visits, forming an advisory committee. We went through a very rigorous public involvement process to get to where we are today, this design that we're presenting in front of you for approval so that we can start the next phase, which is the build phase. We held 2 very well-attended public workshops, and I mentioned workshop because they were very hands-on in terms of allowing the public to actually work on the design of the park instead of the consultant team or the municipality saying, this is what we think should go in here. This is their work. We were merely the facilitators, giving them the tools that they needed to actually do the hands-on project to come up with what we're here to present to you. With the Parks Advisory Committee, including all the workshops and design charrettes that we held, we met with them, I think, over 8 times over the last year. We went to the Northeast Community Council and Scenic Foothills Community Council several times to get their input and approval during the process. We also surveyed the Bartlett High School and the Baggage Middle School students to see what their needs were and how we can meet it through this park. It's walking distance for most of those students, and so this is their playground. They had some very neat ideas that we tried to incorporate as well. And then I have to give a lot of credit to the Parks Advisory Committee because they wanted to make sure that every user of every demographic was heard, that even if they were not going to be the user of some of these activities that we have presented in the park site plan, that they wanted to make sure there was an all-inclusive playground, for example, that subsequent phases will have a community garden for the very diverse ethnic populations that are in the Muldoon area that can grow vegetables and take them to farmers markets to sell. What else? So as I mentioned, this plan we have before you, this site plan that we're asking for approval tonight, is the culmination and the articulation of the community's vision that they've been working very hard on for the last, I would say, 10 years or more. And hopefully after tonight we can begin the next phase, which is get approval for the site plan, resolve our conditions, and then go to construction. We are looking at a June start construction if we can get all our permits and approvals in place so that we would have a 2-year construction period to meet the grant requirements that the state has funded this project. And if we can get this under contract by the end of June, then we will be good to not lose that state grant that is going to be really hard to get in the future. And I also like to add that because the Parks and Rec bonds passed in April, we are able to include some of the additive alternatives that are in the site plan narrative. The pavilion, the trail connections, and then the synthetic turf for the turf play area. So that's a bit of good news that we've had since we submitted this to you in March. Thank you very much, and we are available for any questions that you have.
Great, thank you. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Lee? Mr. Sahil?
I don't have a specific question on the site plan. I think you guys have done a great job with this. One of the things I found curious, I think this is the first park I've ever reviewed that's zoned B3. And why is this dedicated parkland? Is there a plan to go PLIP in the future? What's the thinking there?
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Sile. That's a very good question. The park is dedicated. The Assembly dedicated the park last year. It was purchased by the municipality in 2006, but became an officially dedicated park last year. We have hundreds of parks in Anchorage, and not all of them are zoned PLI or PR, the new code, Title 21. There are plans in the future to do some, I guess, across-the-board housekeeping with Parks and Rec and trying to get all the parks rezoned so that they are Parks and Rec. This park is allowed in the B3 zoning district, and there's parks in residential zoning districts, for example, across the city. It's not quite, as maybe it's not the right word, clean, but it is allowed, is an allowed use, and so that's what we have here, the situation. At one point, this was a greenhouse, a commercial greenhouse, and so that zoning district worked then. It still works now. And I'd just like to add and make a clarification on what Sharon mentioned earlier about condition 2. We are not required to do the notice of zoning action because parks and open space, community use parks is allowed in the B3 zoning district. So it's not a conditional use that changes the official zoning map or land use map for Anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Condon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some issues that have to be rectified with DOT. There's 3 different options, I guess, that have been given to you: Boston Avenue, 14th Avenue, and the mall access. I'm wondering which of those options you're leaning towards, or which one would you consider to be an acceptable solution, if any, to access to the site?
Thank you, Commissioner Condon. I will answer the first part of that question, and then Don Porter will answer the second part of that question. So currently this is just one tract of the entire park, so 2.5 acres of a 26-acre park. We are just here for the site plan for the first phase, or tract A. The other 2 tracts have access from Boston Street as well as to Bar on the east side of Boston Street. So there's neighborhood foot traffic access. For this tract A, we have a parking lot that we're proposing with, it's actually 38 parking spots in it. And with that, the access, the main access, and the only access actually is going to be off of Muldoon Road. And so the conditions that DOT have, and we've been meeting with DOT, and Don actually can explain this better than me, in terms of the design of the driveway and the egress, ingress into the parking lot that will be required to meet DOT's driveway permit.
Please state your name for the record and spell it.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioner and Commissioners and Mr. Chairman. My name is Don Porter, DONALDPORTER. I'm the civil lead design for the project team. And so Tract A is a single tract that only has access onto Muldoon Road. And there was a significant effort to discuss this with DOT. And they have concerns about left-turning traffic from southbound coming into the driveways that are there. And so we're working through that with DOT to come up with an acceptable solution of some sort of median to take care of those safety concerns. Those left-turning traffic was already on their radar, and so this kind of moves it up in their planning. It just kind of, well, okay, now you're developing a pre-developed lot. It already had 2 driveways, and we're reducing it to 1. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, a couple of questions on the same topic with Department of Transportation. They did suggest a median, I think that's their preferred suggestion, to prevent left-turning traffic, and I just want to get your thoughts on what you thought about a median.
Most certainly. You know, Muldoon is a high-traffic road, and somebody attempting to make a left turn in, certainly it's something that should be prevented, especially from the southbound.
Do you happen to know what the posted speed limit is it in that area?
I believe it's 45.
And did DOT ever suggest perhaps, I don't know, reducing that speed limit? I know that's nothing that you have any control over, but I'm very familiar with that area, and I think that's way too high for that. Granted, DOT is mainly concerned with moving traffic from point A to point B, so they're not going to reduce their speed limit, but my personal opinion is I don't like those median buffers to prevent turning like that, which doesn't have anything to do with you. I guess my one question I have is on staff condition number 3. It says resolve review comments with DOT, and do we need to further suss that out, or are you willing to sit down with them and grind through them all?
Of course, leading to parks, absolutely. We are committed to coming up with a safe solution that DOT is agreeable to. I don't really think you need to put any more because DOT already has the hammer on us. If they don't give us a driveway permit, the project's done. So we, both MOA Parks and MOA and DOT, we're very committed to come up with a solution that works for both of us.
A follow-up on that real quick. Does this condition pertain to all the driveways onto the overall master plan, or only the one at Muldoon?
I can clarify. This site plan approval is only for Tract A.
Correct.
The overall site plan has already been approved as the way it is, so we're only seeking approval.
No, the reference was to access for DOT for traffic comments, because I remember there's like 9 of them, but I don't remember in particular, like if we say resolve all comments with DOT and some of the comments pertain to East DeBar Road, and you guys are like, we don't have anything like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, through the chair. So to answer the first part of the question, for this site plan, we only need DOT driveway permit for this parking lot that we propose, access off of Muldoon. For the other tracks or the other phases of the project, we do not need DOT driveway permit. They're municipal roads, and we would just work with the traffic department to get the permits that we would need.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Conan, you had a couple, or you had another comment? Sorry, Mr. Miller, sorry. Were you done?
Oh, yes, I'm done. Thanks.
All right. That's all of the questions that I have in the queue right now. So I will open. Oh, Ms. Ferguson just popped up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question. I'm a little bit confused over a point that Juan raised earlier about condition number 2. Typically, that it's not related to how the lot is zoned. So when you said the zoning, I was confused on that.
Sure, I can clarify through the chair. So B3 SL in this case, where the park is, it's allowed use, it's a dedicated park. If it was not a by right allowed use in the B3, then we would have to get a conditional use for this park, and therefore we would have to get a zoning action filed with the recorder's office.
But typically we have petitioners go down and do an NZA just to get it on record that this is what's being planned regardless of the zoning. You just go down and file the resolution. And so I didn't think it was really, this was related to how it's zoned or at all. There's really no connection that I see.
Well, if I could clarify, Ms. Ferguson suggested to delete it.
Yes, I did.
And we are amenable to deleting it as well. We support that.
Okay. Great, thank you. So now I will open the public hearing. I got to read this again. Okay, public hearing is now open. If anybody would like to speak on the case, for the case, come on forward. Seeing nobody coming forward, I can close the public hearing. Any rebuttal? You have about 5 minutes for rebuttal.
We do not have a rebuttal at this time. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Do we have any questions that anybody would like to discuss right now? Currently, the public hearing is closed, and there's no questions for the petitioner, so if I could get a positive motion for the case, that would be great. Mr. Condon, thank you. Waiting for a second. Mr. Miller, thank you. Mr. Condon, can you state your motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move to approve case 2016-0044, major site plan review for Muldoon Town Square Park Phase 1, subject to conditions, department recommendation, conditions 1, 3, 4, and 5, deleting condition 2.
Great, thank you, Mr. Miller, or Mr. Condon. Mr. Miller, would you like to, actually, no, Mr. Condon can speak to his motion now. You stated it.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe that this is a very good, strong step forward for the Muldoon area community. I'm glad to see that you have stuck with it and pushed this through. So I intend to support this motion. It does apply with all of the conditions of Title 21, and it meets the objectives of the comprehensive plan policies 44, 45, 47, 66, and 78.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. Mr. Miller, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I intend to support the motion. I think it's a very good project. It's nice to see. I've been out there, and it's ripe for some improvements. So I'm glad you guys are doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Sawhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I intend to support the motion also, and I would concur with Mr. Condon's findings. I would also add that concur with staff's analysis that the project meets the standards for a major site plan review. I would also find that the proposed improvements are in substantial conformance with the approved master plan, and intend to support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion on the floor for approval 2016-0044 major site plan review for Muldoon Town Square Park Phase 1 with conditions 1, 3, 4, and 5, deleting number 2, and everybody has voted except me. That motion has passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is...
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening. My agenda is right here. Yeah, let's talk about this 1% for art. Has anybody read it? I have not. So we'll just take a minute to read it. Ready, go. have read the majority of it, and I have some concerns, so we can start the discussion if I can start it. That it seems like that when, of all places, the museum, if a piece of art should be somewhat relocated or not deaccessioned, it would be the museum. Am I lone ranger on this comment? Yeah. Ms. Ferguson, do you know much about this?
I did go up and speak to Enzina this afternoon, and my question to her was, so what if the commission asks, like, what happens to the art piece? You know, if they agree, if the commission agrees, and you know, other bodies, because the Public Art Committee has already agreed that they are another body that they get the opinion of from on these deaccessions, and they've already agreed to that it should be I can't say that word, deaccessioned.
Yeah. And
so, so I said, so what happens to that situation? She said either of two things. If the decision is to deaccession it, then they give the artist the opportunity, if they want it, and they would have to pay for it, but the museum would take it apart, ship it down to the artist if the artist wanted to hang on to it, but it would be at the artist's expense. Otherwise, if the artist doesn't want it, then the museum would have it destroyed.
So, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're just
Because
talking here?
if you've read through this, there is no other place to do it. There is no budget to move it. It has to be moved because of the renovations that's going to happen in the lobby of the museum, and and it's had a history of safety issues with slip and fall accidents, and it's just, my opinion is, not that it matters, but my opinion is it's just outgrown its life. You know, it was made for that place. It's been in there since 1986. But the city has moved on. They're renovating the museum. They've added an addition to the museum, and it just doesn't have a place anymore.
So when somebody renovates a building and something is there, either it goes somewhere or it's incorporated into the facility or it goes away. There
Yes.
was no discussion about, oh yeah, we thought about this. We think that we can, you know, incorporate something into the, I mean, this is the museum. I mean, these people live and breathe art.
Right,
And
but I
how
think
they're-
I did tell Angela that, and Zena, Angela was the previous curator, that, I mean, my opinion is it just looks very dated in that space. I mean, even, I've been here 19 years, and I first saw it 19 years ago, and it was dated then when I saw it then. And they've always had it roped off because nobody can go near it because of the safety concerns. So, you know, in Angela, there's another art person in there when I went into her and Zena's office this afternoon, and they both shook their heads, yeah, it's dated. So that's, I think, maybe part of the issue also.
But the question of art being dated isn't a question of its validity.
Right, but given
know if
all the
that's
other
our purview,
factors,
though.
is that there is no budget to move it, there is no place to move it, and it has to be moved because they're going to, you know, renovate that museum. That museum, the whole stairway is going to be moved, and this piece is right next to that stairway that's going to be relocated. And given its history of safety issues, the decision, they are recommending it be deaccessioned.
And just so we're clear, the museums are always replacing art. They're always moving it around.
Well, they're
changing
moving it.
Well, no, they're
They're not just throwing it in the garbage, though.
well, if they
It goes somewhere
could,
else.
if they could, they would. But I'm wondering during when they redo the museum, will there be another piece commissioned?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, typically they're under the 1% for art. So it's, yeah, they will probably have to add a piece. But it's a whole, I mean, yeah, they may. I couldn't answer for sure on that, but they are subject to having to provide 1% for art.
So what are we really discussing here? It has to go. There's no funding
Right.
to move
And
it.
it's just
So
whether or not the commission supports the deaccession or doesn't support it.
and just for to, just to argue about this, if we were to not support it, would that make a difference?
Well, I mean, if you read that line, you see the first paragraph on it, the last sentence says, if the commission has an objection to the deaccession recommendation, the curator of public art shall seek the opinion of the municipal attorney. So that's where it would go next.
Yeah.
Does anyone want
I
this
would
in their
have-
front yard, maybe?
I would have one opinion, but it's obviously one way over here on the right.
We put you in it for...
Thank you very much, because then I can say what I want and then don't have to be part of the crowd. I was here when that was put in, and I was here when the museum was built, and I've done a lot of dancing on that floor next to that pond, and never have slipped and fallen and found it remarkable. I do find it quite interesting to me that the entire history of what was built as the museum is now being, both as a resident, as an architect, is being completely obliterated by a whole new group of people who've decided what the museum should look like. And I find that, quite frankly, distasteful. The museum was built, we spent millions of dollars on that museum as a public and then private, and now it's kind of like, well, it belongs to a certain group who decides what they want with it. It is a public facility. This is a public piece of art. I find it interesting that they couldn't have taken into account that they were going to do this, and the architects and the people getting involved find something to do with this. Yes, it is dated, but so is this whole town. I'm dated. I mean, I'm an antique, okay? And my position on that is that's part of the art of our community. And if we decide just because it's dated we're going to tear it down or we're going to throw it away, that's not part of our community and that's not part of our culture. So I would vote no on this because I believe, and I have designed buildings that had art in them, and we took care of that. We found a way to use it, move it, change it, do something with it, so that that $40,000 spent on public art that somebody labored over and a whole community spent their money on years ago isn't thrown in the dump.
Through the chair, can I respond? Well, one, I mean, the reason it being dated is not one of the reasons that they're doing away with it. It's for all the other reasons that are in here and that I mentioned. And
they could have increased the safety value. They could have done something different with a pond around it. There's a lot of things, ingenious things that architects and folks do when they are thinking about saving something versus saying, hey, that's dated, we're tearing out the stair, let's just get rid of it. And everybody goes, yeah, it's worthless.
But the other part of it, the history of it that you mentioned, that it's been part of the museum since '86. But I mean, they will have photos of it, and they'll be archived and all of that. So future generations want to know what was there, what the museum, lobby area originally looked like. It'll be there. That's about all I can say.
Yep.
I can't request
to in response to that.
Understood. Thank you.
Are there documented cases of slip and falls and safety issues?
According to the letter.
I mean, so that's what we have to take into
Yes,
account.
right.
We've got an
They said not only slip and falls, but there have been, where was it?
numerous incidents of slip and falls, some with injuries.
Yeah, exactly, with injuries. So there's a liability issue as well with that.
But I understand what you're saying, Jerry, is that why don't we look to find a way to fix that? But does that change the integrity and the design of the art anyway and what it was meant for?
I mean, it's a pond with a sculpture in it with water flowing over the edge. I mean, and the reason that there's been slip and falls and been danger issues is because it was designed even with the floor. So people would stand around, not pay attention, step into the trough on the side. But there's ways to put curbs around things. I mean, they put the ribbon around it, but you could have done something different. You could have moved the whole piece, and in the moving of it, put in a curb and a safety rail, or things that anybody could have done. And I appreciate that those safety issues are there, and need to be addressed.
And is that our purview, though? Is our purview to know where it goes when it leaves, or to address a safety concern?
Just to address the issues that are here and then make a decision.
Well, the decision that you're asking us to make is to support or not support the deaccession of the Anchorage Museum pond.
Correct.
Mr. Hart?
Thank you. That is correct, and you represent all of us this evening, and so you heard some passion on the other side.
Yes.
And I think staff doesn't represent that. We're just bringing the information to you. It's for you to talk about what's important as a community and what the role of art is and architecture is in this community as we move forward. So that should be your passion this evening, and make that recommendation either way.
Okay, great.
And
go ahead, Mr. Condon.
What kind of contractual obligation do you have with the artist?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know. The other point I want to bring up is that the museum used to be part of the Muni, but now it has this weird quasi kind of relationship because they now have a CEO who is, of course, Julie Decker. So they have a different relationship. The museum is not fully under municipal, I don't know what the word is anymore. It used to be. But some years past, their status changed, and now they're sort of independent, but not really. I'm not quite sure what that is, but they're not really part of the Muni anymore. If that helps you in your decision making, Annie.
I would like to propose a motion to support the ascension of this piece of art, and I will not be supporting that motion.
Thank you for the motion. Do we get a second? Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Winchester, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting the motion, as I pretty much passionately said earlier. I do believe it is a responsibility of this commission to look at the pieces of art and to hold those accountable for either relocating or possibly doing something with that piece of art. This sets a very poor precedent for the municipality of Anchorage to just say, hey, we're building a new building and we're moving a stair, we're just going to tear out a $40,000 piece of art and throw it in the dump. And I find that distasteful and not acceptable as a member of this community.
Great, thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thanks. I intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to it? I have a few opinions.
I wouldn't mind, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Ream.
Chair. When put in those terms, Commissioner Winchester, I don't necessarily agree with keeping a piece of art that is unsafe, but I do not agree that because it's not in the cards to put it anywhere else or mitigate those safety hazards, that it's just okay to destroy it. It's a piece of art that's been in place for, I'm going to date 30 years.
40.
So I think that I'm not an accountant, and so I do think that actually I agree with you, and I support the motion based on that.
Which I think means you don't support the motion.
I support his not supporting the motion. Dang it. Okay. It's so confusing.
I have
to state it in the positive,
yeah.
right?
I have similar thoughts as Mr. Winchester and Ms. Ream, and I would encourage I don't support the motion. I would encourage the curator, or Ms. Marari, and the architect and the municipality to try to not just trash it, try to incorporate it in some fashion in the new renovation of the museum. Now, that doesn't mean take it wholeheartedly as a 20 by 20 pool that you're just going to move around. I mean, it's an art piece that has water in it, that has there was some content that was there before that I think needs to stay at the museum. I think there's a lot of people that go to the museum, they know about it, they talk about it. I know I've certainly been there, and my kids have been there, and they talk about it, and I think it's important to keep that element there. But I do understand that there are restrictions and problems with remodeling, and it just needs to be taken into consideration, and now I think it's just not taken. It's just, oh, we'll just throw it away and do something else. So those are my thoughts. So anybody else? Great, if we could all vote. So we're voting. So there's a positive motion, so if you do not support the motion, then you vote no. Yeah. Great, thank you. So that has 5 nays, so that failed. So it sounds like we'll be seeing that again from the lawyers, the municipal attorney. All right, next on the agenda is... I had a list up on... Here it is. We're going to talk about... Got it. UDC case packets, Ms. Ferguson, you wanted to chat about the review of how it's written up and...
Yes, I do, Chair. Some of the commissioners may have noticed that, Margaret had a case on the park, and then I had a case on a park, but she included the questions from the old UDC questionnaire, which we've still been using for a long, long time. I think the questions began on page 10 of your packet, going back to that earlier case on the South Anchorage Sports Park. And when I wrote my case, I didn't include those because on the new application that we have for it's on the major site plan reviews, it's not included. And we had included them earlier until, like 2016. So, so Margaret and I were going to talk. We did talk about it in the office, and then, I was going to stay and bring it up just to get your all's impression of those questions. So first question I want to ask, do you find those questions useful when you're reviewing, making your reviews on the case? And if they are useful, do you see any modifications that you'd like to make to those questions? And if you still find value in them, we can continue to do it, but we just wanted to know either way whether we should continue with them or not, because we'll do this for every major site plan review. So the petitioners will have to address those questions, and of course staff will also.
Okay, so we're comparing page...
and if you don't have your questions, I did bring copies of the old questionnaire to you, so where all the questions are on the questionnaire.
Okay, so it's page 10, 11, and 12 of the sports complex, and then what about the other one, page...
I didn't include them, so you won't see them in mine.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't see them in there. Does anybody have a thought on this? I still have voting.
What's in the code? What's the code require?
Well, these questions were never in the code.
This is from the application.
Right.
So what's in the code now is if you look at the old application, or look at the application for a major site plan review, that's what's in there. And that's what they need to address. So if you look at the application, it's probably on the second page.
It's on the cover for the Muldoon Park, and I think that's a good question, Mr. Sahil. I think that if it's not part of code, then we shouldn't be including it in the staff report.
So on my staff report on page 25, they have, up at the top it has general site plan review standards, and those are what need to be addressed according to the code.
So I think that's helpful to have in there.
Yeah, but
and that's what you had in yours.
Right. If some of you remember, for years we were combining 2 applications, the old UDC questionnaire with the new site plan review questionnaire. And then at some point we combined the applications, and we were including these questions, the UDC questions, those 7, 8 questions, onto the new application. But then, they've kind of dropped off, and I don't know whether we should continue it. I mean, we can. It just depends on what the commission would like to do. I mean, it's...
My opinion is that if it's in the code, and I think tonight is a perfect example, the sports complex for me was very confusing. It's like, what are we approving?
Yeah.
And it turned out that we're approving more, and then we had a whole bunch of stuff on the table. And the other one, it was clear.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, here's the master plan, here's a section of the park that we're approving tonight, and done.
Was it the original submittal that you got was confusing to you, or the additional material laid on the table?
I personally, and everybody can speak, freely about this, but when I read the first page or second page of that case packet that the petitioner put through, it had 4 items. And those 4 items, I was to the understanding that's what we are reviewing. And it turned out that there was more stuff in there, and I just omitted it because it wasn't stated up front.
Okay, and Margaret's didn't make it clear when she was reviewing it. So there was a lot of stuff then laid on the table that confused you all?
Well, the stuff that got laid on the table was, in my view anyway, it was onerous to be quick on the draw to understand, okay, this is the presentation, okay, this is a letter that actually showed up April 21st at the Muni. There's a stamp on it that says received, but never got in our case packet. So that was a paragraph, a page and a half that was confusing, that had quite a bit of discussion tonight. And perhaps if it was in our case packet, it might not have had as much discussion tonight.
That part was confusing for me as well, as you could see by my questions. And then I got thrown for a loop when we revised it to a 6-foot berm, and I had to kind of reprocess everything, and so that's where I was kind of getting back to our submittal policy, and this has been a recurring theme where we keep on getting stuff at the last minute. Petitioner comes up, oh, here you go, and
well, you can postpone.
Yeah,
right. I know. I guess it's a question of how we want to do it.
I brought it up tonight to see if there was anybody that was interested in postponing, and nobody spoke up, so I didn't push the issue. But if somebody speaks up, then we go down that route. And I think that if we don't, we're going to continue to get a boat ton of information, and petitioners are just going to be like, oh, let's just show this.
Well, I think that the large packet was to help us with the presentation, and I'm really glad that they had it, because it was really hard to see what was on the screen. So that was the big thing they gave us. The other thing was the site triangles, which was necessary because they didn't get the letter even mailed April 21st. This packet came in April 12th. So they couldn't incorporate the site distance triangle that was the berm issue, that was the question that they submitted.
April 21st was when the Muni received it.
No. April 21st was when the letter was written by Mr. Baird, and it never went in.
It says received by the Muni right on the letter.
Well, he said he doesn't know how it didn't get to. That's what the point is. It didn't get in the packet, right? So that's a planning issue. Okay.
That was my point too. Yeah.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. And I think that should have been addressed probably by Margaret in the beginning.
Okay.
Was that okay, guys? What I've learned, and I am a slow learner on this commission. I will tell you, I'm sorry, I am. It's not my wheelhouse, but I'm trying. Is that if I go through the case packet first, I typically get all of my questions answered. Then I look at this, and it's because a lot of this is outdated. You guys do a lot of work between the moment that this is submitted.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't always get everything addressed in this packet, and I understand that, and I do appreciate that you guys try to get the amendments to this out to us, or at least in the packet that we get the week before. So I don't think there was a lot of information handed to us that we didn't know. We didn't need this. I mean, this was her discussion, and she gave us a visual, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I'm fine with what she gave us. It was the letter.
Okay, great.
And thinking about what's involved in the letter and how to address that.
That was a planning issue.
And I was confused by May's presentation even. It's like she was given the whole master plan presentation. I was thinking, this has already gone through master plan. Why is she doing that? And it seemed to confuse me. Why concentrate on all that when she should be focusing on what you guys are deciding tonight?
Right.
So
the other issue was her presentation graphics weren't the graphics they submitted for approval.
Oh,
True.
Jesus.
If they would have presented the plans instead of completely different graphics.
Right.
Okay.
Phasing and years.
That's what was confusing.
Okay. So
That's on the applicant, not on.
And I think that's because of the discussions that she'd had with planning that formulated these anyway.
Right. Okay, so I'll take this back to Margaret tomorrow, and I'll have Margaret listen to it so she can hear you guys, and I won't, be trying to condense it for her. And then I'll even suggest that Maeve listen to it too, so we can send the link to Maeve, and even Jacques if he wants to listen to it, and everybody else on their team, so they will hear directly from you what your issues were, so we don't have a repeat of that.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to change the application?
Well, have we decided? I'll do, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, do we need to make a motion? I mean, who
No,
has
I don't
the-
think you
No,
need to
that's a-
make,
that's a
it's
policy,
informal.
Ms.
Yeah,
Murphy.
it's,
That's Hal's job, to see
yeah.
what our application.
yeah, it's just, I don't usually look at Margaret's stuff or any of the other planners, but I just happened to do it, and I thought, oh, she addressed that and I didn't. So I thought you guys would have a question like, why? And so we had planned to ask you all tonight about, whether or not to keep those questions or not.
I think the more succinct, the more focused it can be on what is actually before us, that's better for everybody. It
Okay.
makes the petitioner focus on what we're actually reviewing, makes us focus on what we're reviewing,
And what the code requires.
And right, and what the
Okay,
code requires.
so we'll dispense with those then.
Yeah. Okay. There was also an email that went around about resolutions of approval getting approved the same night.
Yeah.
I had a question about that. Like, I read the AMC, which is in the binder that we all get when we first come in. The email came from Corliss, from Terry Schoenthal.
Right.
And,
Yeah, that's kind of an experiment that we are looking at doing. I think if you have any questions, you might send them to Terry before the meeting on the 25th and ask for further clarification. But he sent an email out to you. I think it went out today.
We've got 2 emails, and I
Okay.
personally didn't respond to the first one because there's a lot of things that questions, and I wanted to hear what everybody else's opinions were tonight rather than just shooting 14 emails. But the first question is, I think there's a 24-hour protest period where any one of us can, if you make a motion and you don't want it and you come back within 24 hours, what's that? Reconsider. There's a 24-hour reconsider. So I don't know how that is affected by making a resolution of approval the same night, but it seems like maybe that can be tweaked.
Yeah, there may be multiple problems with trying this new experiment. So,
I am in favor of expediting this process.
right.
And
But it could be really difficult on the nights of the meeting to try and work through all these things. So, but that's something maybe take up with Terry.
Okay. And then the other thing that I was going to ask was, there was a comment that one of these case packets was April, or I think it was March something. It was 2 months. And I thought this new code was supposed to speed up that to a month. And it seems like if we could improve that speed up time on that end, then the petitioners would benefit from that as well as the general public because it's a little bit speedier.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of that. Could you repeat that?
One of the case packets before us looks like it took 2 months to come before us, and we're expediting, next meeting to meet somebody's schedule. And I think it's important that we're consistent all across the board. If anybody, comes in that we say, yeah, sure, this is going to take 2 weeks. I mean, how long of a review process is this one coming in?
It's typically 2 months from the time you submit until you get scheduled on the agenda. It's about 2 months.
For new code?
Yeah, it's always been that way, and it didn't change under the new code. Yeah, because we need that much time, because we send them all out to all the review agencies to get their comments, and they're already backed up with other comments from the month before that were submitted. So that's why we have this 2-month process.
Okay, so I've done all the apron. Does anybody else have any other comments?
I guess with the approval of resolutions the night of, what are we going to do with our amendments? How's that going to be handled? We're going to handwrite them on there and then sign?
Yeah, we'll have to, I don't know, it hasn't been,
It
I
was
mean,
in the
Lori,
email.
do you have input on this?
It was in the email that it was going to be typed, and then we would see it on the big screen.
Yeah, it would be, I mean, and all our ugly, laundry, the dirty laundry would be kind of exposed to everybody in the audience who's waiting while we go through all the dirty laundry and trying to figure out what the condition is and all the amendments.
We're going to have a printer here, and we're going to hit print and sign?
Lori can address that.
Through the chair, yes, there's a printer in the press room with the clerks.
Wow.
So what Francis is planning to do the next meeting is, while you're making the findings, he's going to enter them on a laptop on a resolution and then put them on the screen for you to review them and approve them, and then he'll print them out for you to sign that night.
So that seems a bit, like it's an alternative purpose. Like we had 2 cases last week, right? Or one last month? We don't have any resolutions in front of us right now. And now we're talking
There
about
weren't
doing it
any.
the same night?
I know. I would say just bring up these issues with Terry.
Through the chair, excuse me, you were talking about the appeal period?
Yeah.
That's once the resolution is approved, as your 15-day kicks in.
No, there's a 24-hour time frame that,
Oh, for the reconsideration, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's 24 hours for the reconsideration.
Okay, so we've said a lot of stuff here. Can that just be relayed to Terry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then if we need to chime in on anything else, then we will.
Okay.
And have Terry email us.
I think we should give it a try.
Yeah.
And then we will discover all the things that cause us concerns as we try, and then we'll try to figure out how to resolve them. I know in the Matsu Borough, they do them the night of their hearing. And I have a
How do
friend.
they do
that's- They do it. So if
No,
Matsu
how?
Borough can do it, we can do it. Yeah. So.
Okay, I don't have anything else. I get a motion to, we have to verbalize our motion to adjourn since our computers are froze up.
That's Nicole's favorite motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn
Picture on your floor.
on the floor, because I'm going to be on the floor.
All right. You get a second? Great, thanks everybody. See you next month, or in 2 weeks.